Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 652. Meta wouldn't do that. For Monday, November 1st, 2021. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norton. Thanks for joining us. Well, Facebook's new corporate name is officially out there, and the critics are in overdrive. Operating under the name Meta, Facebook hopes to focus their attention on the creation of a metaverse. So what does the panel think? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, real-life branding opportunities in virtual worlds, PayPal dropping Pinterest, why your friends love your mom's clothing brand, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the founder and principal consultant at the Idea Integration Company. Mr. Saul Colt is here. Hi, Saul.
Oh, Bob, I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to talk about all this meta goodness.
I know, lots of good meta stuff to talk about this week.
That's what a lie sounds like, yeah.
Now, also joining us, we have the founder and chief strategist of creative and immersive technology consultancy, The Antipodean, as well as co-founder of exploration and technology startup, Voyager. Ms. Michelle Excel is here. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Bob. It is so good to be back. I was looking back on my notes, and I think it was January or even the end of last year since I've been on.
It was a long
thank you
time.
for the invite.
Yeah, I was really glad to get you back on. It's just like, I know you've been busy, and obviously from your expanded bio, you've got a lot of things on your plate. So I'll be interested to hear more about it.
New companies. Hopefully we can talk about some of that at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, he's the chief brand and marketing officer for GRK Fresh Greek and board member at Mashburn Enterprises. Mr. Jonathan Sackett joins us. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, guys. It's so great to be here. I'm so happy. And Bob, I want to say congratulations.
Congratulations
on winning the podcast for marketing and advertising.
Oh yeah, that poll that Oracle put out.
I loved it. I got to tell you, I think I was more excited than you were. I was throwing it around there. Jamal was throwing it around. We were getting everybody to vote. It was great.
I was really excited about that. That was really great. It's just like Tamara Pruitt works there now, and she put us up for it. So it's kind of an inside track, but I'm just really glad.
Hey, listen, man, it's well deserved. Proud of you.
Yeah, very, very excited about that. Well, let's jump into the topics. First up, Facebook, which we talked at length about last week. We talked about the Metaverse play that they're doing. Well, they've rebranded now as Meta. Now, setting aside the snark, Michelle, Wendy's in particular was particularly snarky, rebranding themselves as @Meat during the time, which I thought was fantastic. What do you think? Is it a good name? Is it a good positioning? Does it put them in a good place for going forward as the leader of the Metaverse creation crew?
Yeah, okay. It's a big question. A few different things I've been tossing around while thinking about this, specifically about the branding. It's never a great idea to lean into a buzzword, I don't think. And the fact that Metaverse has become incredibly popular in common circles now, that everybody has heard the term, everyone has used it in some capacity. But at the beginning of, mixed reality and VR's new wave, 7 years ago, we were also tossing around mixed reality, and Vi was trying to be a mixed reality company. It seems a little short-sighted to call yourself Meta. I understand that it has meaning separate from the metaverse as well, and it does make sense as an overarching name when you have a group of companies. It also makes sense when you do work in different realities. Like, I get it. It does make sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on that. I mean, it's kind of it's this weird, interesting kind of almost space. It's very meta. I mean, the whole idea of having a double meaning is interesting to me, but it's kind of a transition word, right? It's like meta is kind of this transition from one state to another state, and I'm not sure that's the best way to say we're in transition.
Well, it also means like overarching, right? So it is, meta in terms of, they have this suite of products, but they really are thinking about the bigger picture. Like, it logically makes sense. I get that part of it. It just seems almost irresponsible from a branding point of view to lean in so heavily to something that may change in a couple of years. We may be calling the metaverse something completely different. It's dating itself, is what it feels like.
But here's the other mistake they made. I couldn't care less what they call themselves, because I have a bigger opinion on this that I'll get into in a second. But they made the mistake that car companies have made over and over and over by not actually checking to see what the word means in different languages. And I read that they didn't go to an outside branding agency to come up with this work. It was all done in-house.
Right, all in-house, right.
Or maybe, but, like, the Meta is the same as the Hyundai Kona. Do you guys, like, if you guys know the story of the Kona, Kona means pussy in Portuguese. So the car did not sell very well in Portugal and Portuguese speaking countries. But the other thing they didn't look at was Meta means death in Hebrew. So for all the irony about Facebook and all the things they're going through, they literally named their company Death, which seems like a bad kind of omen, if you ask me. But, what I think this whole renaming and rebranding and all this stuff, and we know that Facebook's still going to be called Facebook and Instagram's still going to be called Instagram. It's the same as Alphabet. I think what they're actually doing is hunting for a new CEO for Facebook, someone willing to absolutely just destroy their personal reputation for like $50 million a year. And if anybody from Facebook is listening, tell me where I apply, because the role of this new CEO is going to be for the next 5 years. Every time the CEO of Facebook gets called up in front of Congress, that person has to go instead of Mark Zuckerberg. What? Facebook did something horrible again? Yes, it's this person's problem. And, it's not Zuckerberg's. And Zuckerberg is going to be the face of Meta, this new friendly thing that isn't, making people want to kill themselves and all sorts of things. And, with all the new regulations and all the, the stuff with Congress and stuff like that, I think that this strategy is actually really smart, because, they kind of know that they can't win with Zuckerberg in front of Congress and all these things. So, if it seemed rush or it seemed whatever, then it probably really was.
Yeah, it's interesting. Michelle, I want to get back to you, because I wanted you to kind of expand a little bit on your thoughts as well about the name and also whether or not it makes sense for the company. Do you agree with some of the things that Saul positioned it as being?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really smart. I hadn't really put that together, but it makes a lot of sense that it's going to be much easier to keep Facebook separate. I think, you're totally onto something there. And I think that's really smart. And you wouldn't, like, you actually don't hear Alphabet, right? Like, we don't really talk about Alphabet. You see it sometimes, but we don't really talk about it. So, whether Meta is actually going to become something we say on a regular basis or something that they push on a regular basis, or whether it was, as Saul said, a total play to now separate the companies more effectively, which I think it will, because right now we say Facebook for meaning Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Like, we actually use Facebook as the parent company, which it is. And I think that's really smart. In terms of them, something else you said, Bob, about them being the company to make the metaverse, two things. One, that gives me chills in a bad way, totally negative way. Not great chills. Appropriately spooky for today. Definitely. Try not to think about it too much. But two, I've heard a lot of chatter within the XR community, which I live very much inside, that hearing a company come out and declare their intent in the metaverse and that it is the future and that they are putting so much money behind it is, I guess, not heartwarming is the wrong word, but it's inspiring for a lot of people who work in the industry, because it means it's validating a lot of the work that they've been doing over the last 5+ years. And also it means there will be more business in XR in general and all of the other connected ecosystems that go with it, in terms of metaverses. Having Facebook lead it has been a quandary and something ethically that we have been talking about in the XR industry for many years because of Oculus.
And we should probably clarify what XR means. XR being, AR, VR, the whole spectrum of VRs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an easy term for AR, VR, mixed realities, things like that. And because Oculus has been the dominant consumer headset for so long, and because when they ascended, you had Cardboard, which was Google's low-cost play. You had Gear VR, which was Samsung's. You had all of these other low-cost accessible ones that had gotten people into VR maybe the first time. You had them all just stop. They all disbanded. That all of those programs were dismantled and stopped. In fact, most of Google's 3D semi-XR play completely folded. A bunch of its different divisions did.
Let's clarify that. Let's clarify that.
We've already been talking about it.
Let's clarify that. What actually got shut down? Because what's getting shut down over and over again is the hardware plays. Because Oculus is so dominant in that space. It's the hardware that keeps getting shut down. But the creation of a space for that hardware to function in is something that most people are really excited about. And what this represents a giant step forward in trying to build some kind of architecture that maybe, if Facebook will allow it, for other people to play in. Am I wrong about that assessment?
No, I think that's the intent. Facebook is definitely not the right company to be doing that. I mean, they have just done nothing to prove that they're the right company to do that from an ethical standpoint, or that they are going to, play nice when it comes to interoperability and making sure that there are standards that mean that anyone who's building anything can talk to anyone else who's building anything. Like the ideal of the metaverse is that we will have common protocols, languages, platforms. We'll have integration, basically. There's some other fancier, longer words for that. But it's not that we build multiple metaverses and it's the race to be the one that's going to be dominant. The idealistic view of it is that it will be interoperable. So we will actually be able to share assets and share commerce and share spaces across different places. Like right now, Roblox is an island unto itself, as Facebook is an island unto itself, right? So I think Facebook declaring that they are going full tilt into the metaverse is rightly scaring a lot of people, because they know that they have the reach and they know that they have the money to be able to create an ecosystem that, yeah, sure, could invite a lot of people onto it to do fun things, but it also could become very exclusionary.
Is there a case to be made that this is like theme parks, that, Cedar Point operates a bunch of theme parks, and Paramount operates some theme parks, and Six Flags operates theme parks, and Disney operates theme parks. And what we're really creating is different theme parks for people to play around in, and it doesn't really need to be interoperable. A word, interoperable.
It's a really difficult one. Yeah, interoperable is better than interoperability, because then it gets really strange at the end. No, it's the internet. So, but we kind of have lost sight of the fact that the internet actually has really common standards, right? Like there are domain names, and there's HTML. There's certain standards and protocols and things that make the internet work, so that you can access it from a mobile phone, any mobile phone, wherever it might be. There's standards that we all abide by, and if we're full tilt going into the metaverse, and this is where we're going to be spending more of our time, it doesn't make a lot of sense for really long-term growth for us to be creating different walled gardens. It would be so wasteful. It would be unbelievably wasteful because there would just be so much effort put into each individual walled garden. Like we're starting to get better 3D standards so that 3D assets can be shared across platforms. Even WebGL to a certain extent, in making the flat internet a little bit more 3D, is now mobile and multiple desktop browser compatible and things like that. Like standards, common standards will be required. Otherwise, it wouldn't function in the same way that the internet does right now. I think we do forget that a lot of work was done at the beginning of the internet, and that there are common standards.
Right. And
this isn't just about building something on the internet. This is about an evolution of essentially what the internet is now.
Right. And it continues to be that way as well. I mean, with the open standards committees and all the different meetings that go on to just make a simple change to the internet and the IP protocols. Jonathan, what's your thoughts on how Facebook's evolving? Obviously, they got a different focus at the top with Meta, but how does Facebook itself evolve through this process? How do all its platforms that are out there, how do they evolve? What does this do for them being focused on a metaverse play for the entire company?
Well, the problems that they have aren't going to go away. I mean, let's face it. You guys know as well as I do, we're talking about you've got one chance to build something right the first time. And Facebook was never built right the first time. From a code standpoint, it's spaghetti. It is. And we all know.
Right. I've heard that from many people that it's pretty much a mess under the hood.
Right, because what you did is you keep you break a tennis ball and you keep wrapping it with tape until you don't see the tennis ball anymore, and that's pretty much what they've done. Now, what that does is it sends a shockwave of hindrance that customer service is tough. Now, Bob, we've worked with over the years some of the biggest clients, the biggest corporations on earth, and we can't get attention for problems with Facebook. So, the promise of a virtual world with more functionality and things like that, you can't put lipstick on that pig. You can't. So, I don't know. I've read probably most of the same things that you guys have. I don't know if Facebook itself is truly going to be separate from the real metaverse, because it seems like it has to be. Because you can't unless you rip the site down or parallel path, do a build on it. You can't walk away from what you've already got. At some point, sooner than later, either way, if it becomes a huge sticking point or a huge central application for the metaverse itself, if they're going to do that, a lot of rebuild is going to have to do, and I don't think they're going to do it.
It's interesting to me that we kind of poo-poo on Facebook all the time about the coding problems and the ethics problems and everything else that goes on there. But Instagram seems to be a much more stable platform overall. Obviously, they're migrated a lot of that code over to the Facebook protocol and is trying to put it under one big umbrella, but it seems like it's a better play. What do you guys think? I mean, is Instagram in danger at this point? Is Instagram better positioned to take the lead in a metaverse type scenario than Facebook itself is? I mean, what do you think?
I think they'd be silly to, like Instagram is their golden egg right now. It's the one thing that well, sure, there's still people have a problem with it, with body image and stuff like that. But
right.
It's the one that is still growing. People are still excited about and still loyal to. Or Facebook, it seems like the demographic of a Facebook user changes every 6 months or so. Where Facebook, where Instagram is still a thing. Like I agree with Jonathan. I couldn't tell you if this is going to be a standalone thing or they're going to try to integrate it. I personally think they should do it as a standalone thing, because then they can feel good about themselves about all these growth numbers and
autonomy, right?
And stuff like that. Because but at the same time, it's like one thing about this metaverse, and echoing a little bit about Jonathan said about getting it right the first time. We are as whatever we want to call ourselves, digital natives, digital, observers, like whatever, like people who spend a lot of time on the internet, like we're also really jaded and like have a mass sort of like, you're not supposed to use pitchfork mentality. It's not supposed to use the word pitchfork anymore. It's like, I don't know. But
I've not heard that one. I have no idea. I had no idea that was now a woke imperative. So what are we doing?
Yeah. But anyways, my point is like Clubhouse is a great example. Like everybody went and they spent 2 months there. And now like I never hear Clubhouse spoken about again. I'm assuming it's not a thing. I wasn't really into it, so I didn't stick around. But I will
tell you, people are still writing articles saying, will Clubhouse kill podcasting? I saw another one this week, and I'm kind of like, I don't think so. It doesn't seem to be doing as well as it was at first. But your thoughts?
Well, that's right. So, Saul, weren't you and I on the show talking about that, where we said it's basically with the 1-900 numbers all over again?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
But there was social media consultants and just consultants in general who like rebranded themselves as Clubhouse experts. And we're going to see so many metaverse experts and all these people, because whoever gets in first seems to make a tiny bit of money or get some press or whatever. But like people are going to check out this thing en masse. And it's going to have the greatest 2 months of any like app ever existed. But the thing to watch will be what happens in month 4. Do people stick around? Because like our appetite and patience and expectation is very, very different than the early days of Facebook and the early days of Twitter, where, it goes down for 6 months and nobody really cares because they love it so much. But man, like I agree with Jonathan, man. Like it's got to wow people, or it's just going to be a 2 month, 3 month thing, and we're just going to go back to whatever we were doing before then.
But it's a roadmap. It's a roadmap, though. So that what they're doing is they're declaring their intent to become a more metaverse-focused company. And, we've been talking intensely about the metaverse for at least the last year. You are totally right, though, Saul. There are metaverse experts already popping up. And it reminds me very much of like 4 years ago, roughly, where a whole bunch of different brands and agencies and studios were hiring VR evangelists. And I think we're going to see the exact same thing. And we all know that doesn't work, because to actually approach to approach a precipice or, a cliff in technology, to approach XR in general or, digital commerce in general, things like that. It's not one person. Like you actually have to change the entire, DNA of the company. And so what they're saying is they're all for this evolution. They're all for like Web 3.0 and beyond. Right. So I think that's what they're saying. And I think what we're going to see is them, doing more plays from Facebook Reality Labs side of things. So around Oculus, they've got Horizons and they've got Workplace and all of those, admittedly actually really solid, good, useful, XR tools. And I think they're just going to start talking more about it as a company. So they're not going to just go ahead and build something separate. It's going to be Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Metaverse. Like that's not going to happen. But they're declaring their intent to be more Metaverse focused. So that includes, I'm guessing, it's going to be like an overhaul of their commerce system so that they can actually support payments, across like the Oculus ecosystem and things like that.
And eventually,
I think their tools are going to show up in other places.
And eventually, it's got to be a kind of blending of all these different things they've already created and, a slow migration into the metaverse. I mean, you got to have Facebook elements, you're going to have Instagram elements, you're going to have WhatsApp elements that are going to be showing up in this metaverse. I mean, there's got to be a play to bring all this under this umbrella. If not specifically migrating the entire Facebook platform over, at least bringing that same functionality so there's a way to access that kind of content in the metaverse. That would make more sense for them.
Well, we already do. We already use it as a messaging platform on Oculus, right? Like you have to have a Facebook account for it to work. Like folks like me who spend time in these spaces and these virtual spaces already, like it's already integrated. So I think that what I'm hoping they don't do is just turn it into another ad platform and, essentially put up billboards, which is what a lot of brands are doing right now, right? They're just sponsoring esports. They're, showing up in games and things like that. But is that really a long-term strategy for it? So yeah, I think that's where brands need to be careful that they don't just treat it as another place to advertise.
So I have a question, and I don't know the answer to this, so maybe you guys do. But how is this any different than Second Life, except for the fact that the tech has gotten better?
It's really
a
not.
Good question. And Second Life is actually still going. So, yeah.
It is?
Yeah, Second Life is still active and kind of doing quite well.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I would highly recommend that you folks and listeners as well look up Tony Parisi, Parisi. Tony is OG Metaverse guy. There's a few people you can say that about, but Tony really is. And look up some of his recent posts. I believe he's been posting on Medium. I should know this, but if you just Google Tony Parisi, or he's at Unity at the moment, if you Google him, he was very involved in Second Life the first time around, and he's really vocal on the differences and how we need to come together to move forward in terms of standards, what's going to make it great, what's going to make it crap. And he's been around long enough in this actual space, because it's the same sort of things happened when VR took off again in our current cultural minds, right? Like consumers started using it and things. VR's had a go at that a couple of times before over the last few decades, and this time it stuck, and there's reasons why. But I think with Metaverse, you're totally right. These epic game worlds or places like Second Life, we've had goes at this before. And in fact, we've had goes that have been wickedly successful and have actually continued. So there's a lot of people out there who are happy about the fact that it's come back around now, that the tools are better this time, that people are paying more attention this time, that it might actually gain traction this time. So you can sort of think of it like these cultural moments that pop up and drive it forward. But this stuff has been bubbling away and evolving and still growing beneath the surface.
Well, this is a perfect segue into the pivot I wanted to do on the conversation. I mean, the Metaverse, for me, on this show, we've continually brought this up as a topic for the past decade. This is not a new thing that we've been talking about. I mean, ever since, Second Life was a new thing, we've been talking about all these different aspects of what a Metaverse might look like and how it's the natural extension. My personal belief remains the same. I don't think it's going to really take off until people are jacking up with a neural interface right through the back of their neck. I mean, I don't think that goggles are the way to do this, but that's beside the point. That's a little bit radical. But Jonathan, now that we're entering this long predicted reality, how is it different than the predictions? I mean, how is it shaping up? Is it everything you hoped it would be? What is it failing to be? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, man, I got a lot of thoughts on this one. I think, it's so funny, Saul, that you brought up Second Life, because I remember when Second Life launched, and people in their work signatures, some of the geeks that I worked with were putting their name or handle or whatever it is. They were putting that on their signature, and I thought, oh my God, really? And you don't see anybody doing that anymore. At least the people that I work around don't. To me, it's the promise of this open source neural network where you can always be in the front seat of the show. You never have to wait in line for anything. Those promises are great. The challenge that we're having in front of us right now, though, is mostly two things: technology and ethics. So right now, while Facebook is getting blasted for providing incentives for you to be mean to other people, if you will, they're having a lot of ethics problems. Well, the other challenge is the technological hurdle that you got to go through, because to do these sorts of things where I can suddenly virtually fly off into something, first of all, you have to have the goggles have to work, or the glasses, or the headset, or the gear, or whatever. We're also seeing integration. I don't know if you guys have read about this at all, but it's tech clothing. Basically, so for example, if I were to fall in a virtual world, it'll ping my knee, for example. So you've got a lot of hurdles to really make this metaverse something. I personally don't believe that our technology has caught up to that fact yet, that it's going to have to This tech is going to have to flex, bend, and possibly even break a couple times for it to work the way the dream was imagined. From a technological standpoint, I don't think we're there yet. I think the promise of what it could be is still there, but we're still going to have those ethical challenges, and even more so, and we're going to have technological barriers for the average person to get there.
We're also going to see the population shrink drastically because no one's going to be cool enough to have sex if this thing takes off.
Or at least not the kind that reproduces people.
Saul brings in the doom. There you go.
Yeah. But I also don't think it's going to be okay. So those imaginings of the metaverse, I mean, they were great for a start because they have been inspirational. But I think people are getting very fixated on them. So that isn't necessarily the end goal, to be completely immersed. One of the articles, Bob, that you shared said something about, like, that world of the Matrix. We're finally there, and I'm like, why would you use that as the analogy? Like, Matrix was a horrifying sort of, absolutely dystopian future, but it doesn't necessarily have to be there. The fact is that tens and tens and tens, actually probably hundreds of millions of people daily are already spending significant amounts of time in metaverses, or things like precursors to metaverses, in game worlds. They're already, they have very healthy communities and friendships in those places. They are already doing commerce. They're already dressing their avatars. And I don't think it is as damaging as some of us older folks think it is when kids are actually, buying new skins and doing things in those games, because I was saving up my pocket money and, working when I was young, and I was spending all of my money on clothes when I was young, right? Clothes and music. That's what we do. And what are kids doing now? They're spending money on clothes and music. It's just some of it is being spent in virtual worlds. Well, and so it's still an expression, but these are first steps. I think we'll see it evolve into a lot of different paths, not just how far along that road are we to get to Ready Player One. It's going to diverge well before we get there.
No, I think so too. I mean, but one thing that I would add from the technological standpoint is if you guys have ever followed the historic argument between Edison and Tesla, the whole AC/DC thing, and the thing about it is that on paper, if you guys have followed that, Tesla should have won. Right? Because from a technological standpoint, he launched this thing with the Tesla coil, and what you've got is free electricity for everybody, no cords, no plugs, no outlets, none of those challenges that we have. But we couldn't right now, if that would have gone through, there's no way our technology would have followed us, and we wouldn't be able to use a computer as it stands because it would fry. So that's what I'm saying about, look, if they build this out, there are better experimental technologies out there than the current protocol. There are, and that would support something like this and require even less bandwidth. But we've already built these train tracks with the HTTP protocols and things like that it's hard to walk away from it. Because if we built a better experience outside of the existing protocol, it's going to change the technology that we use all along the way. Just like I said, with the whole Tesla coil thing, and we wouldn't be using computers the way we're using them right now.
You have to start somewhere. I think that's the thing. Like, I've been, the reason I started my consultancy, 5 years ago, is to get brands to just start doing something. And I think Facebook announcing Meta and just a general metaverse play, which they've been talking about for months, has sort of thrown down a gauntlet. And I think for brands that I work with, at least, if not on Facebook, because there are still a lot of the brands I work with are not even advertising still on Facebook, it's at least made them more seriously look at, hang on a second, should we be making that first play into augmented reality? Should we be doing that first thing? And there's a really great couple of articles in the Drum about Stella Artois and their new head of innovation and technology globally, Lindsay McKenney. I don't know how to say that, McKenney. And she's basically saying, like, if you aren't doing something right now already, you will fall behind. And so I think, you're totally right. We're going to end up in these branches of technology. Can it run its course as it is, or do we have to completely rebuild from scratch? All of that. The fact is, you have to just start doing something. And so a positive upside to Facebook announcing this, whether we do it in Facebook ecosystem or not, or Meta's ecosystem or not, is that I think it's just an extra little bit of impetus. I've had one brand I've been working with now for a year and a half through their agency who keeps going, we want to do AR, we want to do AR. They've tried, and we've sort of actually had a couple of like false starts because they then get cold feet about ROI and things like that. And this will help them do it. You know, it's already in the plan for next year. This will help them.
So I'm gonna disagree to a short extent or a small extent. I actually don't think brands have to always chase the new thing. How many people, I'll use Clubhouse again. How many people, spun out a Clubhouse strategy only to find that it vanished in 3 months or 6 months? How many people were...
This isn't the same thing. This isn't the same thing. People are using AR and VR every day, millions of people across the world. This is advances in technology, not a new
But I
fad.
don't think every brand has to be first because the audiences aren't even there yet. So right now, the first group of people are going to be a very specific targeted audience. So if your brand doesn't actually speak to or work with that targeted audience, you don't have to go first. And I really don't like when people just knee jerk everything like, oh my God, I need a Pinterest strategy, in 19 whatever or 2010 or whatever.
No, but you need an immersive strategy across the board, whether that's doing something in voice, doing something in AR, their logistics processes, warehousing processes, product processes, everything has already been changing. There are no firsts anymore. If you haven't already done something or tested the water with a $20,000 project or at least like a research exercise, you will fall behind because these technologies are revolutionizing the industries themselves, not just how consumers interact.
Let me ask a question, one last question on this, which is the whole Facebook element of Facebook building the metaverse. Is that just a red herring in the end in terms of the eventual outcome of a metaverse society? The way I'm looking at it, Facebook's initial effort in this space has been abysmal. I mean, they have these floating avatars that are all cutesy. They look like Nintendo Miis. It's not.
They don't look that good.
Yeah, I know. They're not compelling in any shape or form. The universe they're creating.
You're looking at 2D videos, not within the 3D worlds.
Right, but even in a 3D environment, that's not a compelling environment. I mean, it's just like having real life interactions or at least some kind of serious gaming environment where you can play as a character that feels real. It seems like that's what people are yearning for. And I'm wondering, does Facebook fail abysmally at this and just be the hardware manufacturer in the end? I mean, what are your thoughts? Nobody wants to tackle that one.
I just have to say something. So the fidelity of it, again, I think that you're thinking that there's like a perfect place we're meant to get to with this. And that's not how the evolution of this stuff is playing out. So there have been immensely useful programs in healthcare, education, things like that. It doesn't matter what that thing looks like. It's still life-changing.
Let me clarify for a second here. I'm not saying that it needs to reach a perfect state, but I am saying that Facebook's effort in this space to be dominant in the metaverse area and to control everything seems like it's never going to happen given their current direction on this and the platforms that they're working with. It seems like it's not, after all this conversation about the metaverse, I agree with you. There's lots of implications and lots of opportunities to use this technology for interesting, powerful, even life-saving technologies, but Facebook is not the one to build it. And it's not only that they're not the one to build it, they can't build it. And that's what I'm positing. Would you agree with that? Or would you say that that's not giving them enough credit for what they've built so far?
That is actually an interesting point, because I think right now we're very focused on, look, they are moving things forward. They are actually building things. People are using these programs and products. But yeah, it doesn't mean that they're going to continue. What if after this $10 billion that they end up spending just in this like coming fiscal or whatever it's going to be, they will keep going forward, and they will keep going forward in this direction, as will everybody else. Whether they end up being the dominant partner or not, no, it's certainly not black and white. I'm not sold on that at all.
Well, yeah, and let's not forget Microsoft is dumping a boatload into their version of this as well. So there's other players in here. I just think, at the end of the day, if this isn't the technological immersive experience that we're hoping for, that provides for social network, commerce, opportunity, longevity, those are the types of things that you have to measure yourself by. I think, Facebook, let's face it, everybody I work with, including, our companies, we're on there too, because it's where the people are. So we have to take advantage of that. I think that with the metaverse, with this whole evolution that could happen, it's still a promise, but it's going to provide so many opportunities for hackers and for data breaching. That's where the real concern is. Look, it's a great opportunity. I love the thought of it. I love the idea of it. I just don't know if we can yet capitalize on it. When our governments or when we find technologies, crash satellites from Russia or whatever else, we're trying to reverse engineer things all the time to figure out, what makes it tick. The thing about it is that if we can't predict the future and we can't build a technology that doesn't exist and expect people to go there because we don't have the means to get there. So necessarily, I would say BIC pens. If I was the CEO of BIC, would I say that we have to be in this whole virtual reality space? No, we got to sell our pens today, but we have to keep a lookout on the opportunities for tomorrow. But it takes both. We always say it's sales overnight and brand over time. And if you can find those opportunities and you don't have the money, you at least have to keep a check on the pulse of it.
Yeah, I can't wait for the impending court cases when Mark Zuckerberg, or perhaps me, if I'm the president of Facebook.
You're really going for that, aren't you?
My vote, Saul, is Theranos.
Yeah, okay. But I can't wait to yell across the room, if you wanted to build the metaverse, you would have built the metaverse.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got to move on to a couple other pieces of news that were floating around this past week. Just a couple of weeks ago, the social world was pretty much a stir with the news that PayPal might be buying Pinterest. Now suddenly PayPal is unequivocally saying it won't be buying the social platform. Saul, what does this say about the future of Pinterest and social as a whole? What do you think?
So when I first heard about the possible PayPal Pinterest deal, I didn't get it because the numbers were just too big, in my opinion. It was going to be the single largest acquisition in tech history. And I don't remember exactly. I think it was $49 billion or something like that.
Well, if you've been listening to the BeanCast, you would have had some great ideas, because we've been talking about the fact that Pinterest, Snapchat, all of them are turning into like home shopping channels, and having PayPal associated might be a really good economic move. But
well, no, I get to that, but like sports contracts, who really cares about numbers anymore? It's not my money. So money aside, I actually think this deal works really well for both sides. The current trend in technology, like you just said, companies are competing to service consumers across entertainment, information, and commerce functions. And the deeper a company can penetrate a customer's daily activity, like Amazon providing TV advertising and, home hub and product delivery, goes on and on and on and on, the more long-term economic value that a company can potentially provide from that relationship. Pinterest has amazing, visual search, zillions of indexed pages and indexed images, and it's got our existing commerce capabilities. This is why it makes huge amount of sense.
Plus all behavioral data, right?
Well,
if you've got historical data, then not only can you set triggers, you can also, one-click shop, no-click shop, floating shopping carts. There's a million things you can do, but if you've got that historical data, you can now start to predictively model it as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I absolutely agree. But the thing with Pinterest, though, is their user growth is shrinking. They had a great year because people were home. They're dreaming of leaving their houses. They're making their mood boards and all that stuff during the pandemic. But even as their growth is slowing, they're a platform about stickiness and engagement. So that should matter. But, sometimes in a VC and an acquisition world, it doesn't matter as much as it should. So what does this mean for social? I don't think it means anything. I think both companies are going to be around for a very long time. Does this mean that they won't make this deal in 6 months or 5 years or for more money or less money? I can't say. I don't have any inside information, but I actually think this is actually a really good deal for both sides.
So do I. I just think somebody knows something that we don't, because I do understand the modeling, the transactions. I understand all that, but the price tag seems ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
it's
again,
also.
I think it's more of a defensive play than an offense.
Well, I mean, what it says to me is maybe these platforms that are touting their ability to drive social commerce are not driving as much commerce as we think they are, and that when you looked under the hood with a merger acquisition situation where everything's being shown under the kimono, you suddenly realize, this isn't exactly what we thought it was, and we really can't put our money into this. And that's the big concern about the social platforms as a whole, is whether or not there's a real opportunity. Michelle, would you agree with that, or would you disagree?
Yeah, I would agree, but I actually think Pinterest has a much better opportunity to activate commerce than other social media platforms do. And I think that, we've seen Facebook, again, aggressively go into it. We've seen Shopify partner with TikTok recently for in-app purchases and things like that. Like, I think they have a better chance than other people, because people dwell there looking at goods. Like, it's really unique platform for that, and it would actually make a lot of sense. So I don't know how serious that initial actual deal was, or whether it was a leak or it was, I don't know.
Didn't it seem? It seemed like a PR play, didn't it?
It just seemed to be that it was everywhere, but nothing was substantiated.
It was everywhere and nowhere. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. It seemed suspicious, but I think it's a fantastic idea. Like, not fantastic. I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, like, Shopify is just going gangbusters right now, and Shopify Commerce as well, right? So using Shopify Checkout, Google Pay, Apple Pay, like, everyone's kind of got their own play right now. So I think that, if PayPal could essentially like underwrite transactions on a platform as sticky as Pinterest, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. And the last news item that I wanted to get to real quickly, apparently, without even trying, Chico's, which, if you don't know Chico's, it's a clothing brand associated with, at best, Gen X women, probably even older women. It is very, very conservative clothing, let's put it that way. It's suddenly hot with millennials and Gen Z individuals. Now, I don't know. Who wants to take this one? What's happening here? I mean, why is this clothing brand so suddenly hot?
So I saw one article that said that they credit some of this to the fact that they've just recently started investing in more heavily in digital, particularly in social shopping. Can't speak tonight. The retailer built its own studio to create stories for Facebook Live and Instagram, and they basically started marketing. And I think this is just like. It seems like this was table stakes for any fashion brand. They just happened to get into it really, really late, and they're getting some PR around it because they got lucky for being last in, and they found a newer audience and stuff like that. And also, if you want to talk fashion trend, mom jeans and stuff are really big right now and things like that. But it really sounds like this was a case of last one in, and they were able to show this triple-digit growth because the baseline was so low, and someone picked up the article.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's probably what. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I would agree on that. Yeah, they said they weren't targeting younger people, but just being on social in general, it sort of picked up. But there's just from a pure, being a person who's pretty into fashion and has been at home for the last year and a half or almost 2 years, comfort is a really big factor. So if these clothes are actually well made, and it sounds like, folks have maybe been wearing their parents' stuff, maybe they've been actually wearing some hand-me-downs and things like that, or picking them up secondhand. If they're well made and they're comfortable, that's fantastic. But it also sounds, I didn't do a lot of digging around on their site, like they've got some pretty, out there heavily patterned stuff. Like, people want different things. They don't want that old capsule wardrobe, which is, the 5 black, white, gray tops that you can wear to any meeting. Like, they want things that are actually colorful and patterned, so that when they get on that Zoom, people talk about them. I wear like a bright pink top. I have like bright bleached, bright white bleached spiky hair. I have bright pink nails right now. There's like, you want to stand out.
I feel like I'm looking in a mirror right now.
Right.
Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
people want well-made, colorful stuff.
And it's apparently it's not fast fashion either. It's definitely, they have some sustainability practices going on within that company that are way better than your H&M group.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The thing about it is the tonality and the vernacular that a company like that is using is resonating with people. But you know what? It's interesting. I saw an article on them from 2 years ago, and I was – as I was doing my research for the show, I saw this article from 2 years ago that talked about how they were going to begin to target a younger audience, and what a huge mistake it was. Because as advertisers and marketers, we all know, be careful, don't walk away from your audience to gain a new one. And that's what they were being accused of doing. Well, by design or default, it worked.
Yeah.
And I do agree, because especially in these times that we're living in, look, I'm probably not in the best shape of my life. But sometimes second or third to market and or the degree of comfort that the clothes provide work. Let's face it, Google was not first to market, and in fact, the first search engine arguably was Gopher, which is from Minnesota, where I went to school. But
that was again, Telnet, right? That was Telnet.
Well, Telnet and Gopher were about the same time. But the thing is people didn't even know what the hell that meant back then. With these guys, they've got a message that resonates. We're all fat and out of shape because of because of Zoom calls and because of not going into the office. I think it's a perfect storm that's working to their advantage.
Yeah, no one wants to be wearing the tight, like, bodycon stuff right now when they're sitting at a desk all day.
Yeah,
well, I don't know.
You and I will just keep our white hair and our pink shirts.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm in the best shape of my life, so that's all that matters. So it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug. Starting with Saul Colt. You can find him at theideaintegration.com. That's the home of the Idea Integration Company, where he is a consultant doing fabulous word-of-mouth programs for brands all over the world. Tell us what's going on in your world, Saul. What would you like to promote? Maybe come off mute.
I'm unmuted. Conferences are coming back. It's almost the new year, and we're already working on 2 big disruptive sort of, make everybody know who you are at a conference coming in January. So if you guys are looking to start exhibiting and things like that, reach out, because we do conferences better than anybody, and we make sure that not only does everybody know you're at the conference, but you actually sell stuff. So besides that, reach out for any reason. Experiential is so important right now, because we have all been in our house and people are itching to be like actually part of something. So reach out, theideaintegration.com.
Fantastic. Next up, we have Michelle Excel. You can find her at theantipodean.us, and that's the home of the Antipodean, which is her consultancy. Voyager is still too new, so I'll let her tell you about it. But what's going on in your world, Michelle? What would you like to promote?
Yeah, things are. Actually, Saul totally sold me on his services, so I may be in touch, Saul, with some clients for the conference-based stuff. But on the immersive consulting side, you don't have to do AR if you don't want to, but you do need to have a look at the landscape. And so, if you are a brand who has maybe tried a couple of ththings but wasn't sure if they worked, or you're trying to set up internal capabilities, or just figure out what the heck is out there right now in your vertical, in immersive tech, then give me a call. I'm based in the Bay Area, and I'm starting to do lunches with clients again, and that's been really nice because we can still be outside because it doesn't get cold here. So reach out. Find me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest, Michelle Excel with 2 L's, or theantipodean.us.
And we should qualify, it does get cold in San Francisco. It's always cold in San Francisco. They're just used to it. So that's the difference between the weather of that part of the country.
It's just always generally cool, but it's not really ever like cold. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And last but not least, we have Jonathan Sackett. You can find him at grkfresh.com. You can also find him at mashburnenterprises.com. But tell us what's going on in your world, Jonathan. What would you like to promote?
As usual, there's a lot of things that are moving that I can't talk about, and we've got some North Korea deals and some craziness going on, but I'll temper that. I would tell you guys this. First of all, Bob, one of my closest friends, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy about the positive press and publicity that you've gotten with the BeanCast. I'm glad that people are really recognizing that. And every time that I've been on this show, I get so much positive feedback from around the world. So I always want to promote the show, number one.
Yeah, and if I can add tag team on to that, it's just like we're entered into the Adweek Podcast Awards this year for the first time. So I'm not sure if the judges are listening, but let me put my case in there. Listen, and you're going to love this show.
Well, as always, me and the whole brotherhood and the partners and stuff, we'll make sure to promote you in any way we can. You've seen that. Secondly, I got to tell you, my fellow partners in crime that are on the show with me tonight, you can't do better than working with these guys. I definitely want to promote them. Saul and I have known each other through the show for years. And knowing Michelle now, and we're connected on LinkedIn. She's great. She's powerful. She's smart, as you've heard. You could do a lot worse than ever doing business with these great people. So, excellent people. The only thing, I really don't have anything to promote for myself. The only thing I would say is if you follow me on Twitter at Jonathan Sackett, I'll probably follow you back, and you'll always find some craziness in my posts, and I will be promoting the hell out of this show because I love it.
You will be very entertained by Jonathan's Twitter feed and Facebook feed and everything else he's got going on. So definitely check him out.
Can I hire you as a hype man? Thank you for that shout out. That was awesome.
You guys are great. I love it. Every time I'm on the show, I make new friends like you, Michelle. I reacquaint myself with old friends that are really smart, and funny, like Saul. I love it. I love being on the show.
I echo that. And that's why we should all vote for BeanCast on the top podcast.
Absolutely
doing it.
Jonathan in the past life was definitely a carnival barker, so we're excited to have him.
There's two jokes in there somehow.
As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it is time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, the fair. There's this Swedish brand called Oomph, which creates plant-based burgers. I mean, it's basically a vegan or vegetarian type product company. They created human meat burgers in a vegan Halloween promotional push. So I thought this campaign was really very clever, considering the fact that they're a vegan company, and then to be turning around and selling burgers that are human meat just to get people to take the risk, try their product, and see that it's not as bad as eating human meat or any kind of meat. It's actually really good. What do you think about this?
I would have made this a fail because in my mind I thought it was kind of lame, and the reason I thought it was lame is their label and their promotion clearly states it's a plant-based burger. So there was no shock or statement in what they did. If they wanted to make something really cool, they should have created a mystery around this, start a conversation, actually present it as human meat. But the word plant-based was bigger than the human meat part on the label that I saw. So it was a bit of a miss for me. I love the idea, poorly executed in my opinion.
Well, they could have had a huge social strategy where they spelled it MEET, right? They could have done, but it's
or they could have misspelled meat as meta.
Yeah, the Facebook sandwich. It's funny though. I got to tell you, the shock factor for something like that usually works. I get asked all the time when my team did Skittlepox, where she pulls the candy off of Billy's face. They're like, every adult is like, oh, that's so gross, but my kids love it. So I don't know who exactly, specifically age range they were trying to target, but the shock value probably worked.
No, but if they had left off the fact that it was a plant-based burger and for a week only sold this as human meat, it probably would have sold like crazy. People who actually thought it was meat, like they're not going to convert people who haven't tried plant-based burgers by saying it's a plant-based burger. If they sold this thing as human meat and then the reveal was, oh, you ate a plant-based burger, people like the goal of this was to say, oh, plant-based isn't that bad. So like, I don't know, this is like a great idea, poorly executed.
It's funny.
I thought the spot was great, actually. And I was like creeped out the whole way through. And then at the very end, they say something like, but don't worry, it's not real human meat because that would have been gross. I'm like, that's exactly what I was thinking the whole way through. Actually, I thought it was great. I think it was probably a nod for their existing customers more than not, because they do fake meat of a whole bunch of different kinds of varieties. So it's very much in line with their existing brand. Yeah, it was just like a Halloween stunt.
It is funny though that Saul had that strong opinion, because I have the same kind of feeling about the next fair. It's kind of like straddles the line between fair and fail. Was Progressive's Dr. Rick book. Now, if you've not spent a lot of time watching TV and seeing these progressive ads, progressive insurance ads that are showing Dr. Rick, who's helping you not be like your parents. They're hysterical. Some of them are better than others, but they're all pretty compelling. I thought it was really clever, Jonathan, that they came out with a book and they offered it for free. I went through the whole process to order it, and then I got to the shipping page and they tried to charge me $8 for this book.
That doesn't surprise me. Remember, when I was in Boston at Arnold, we were the agency of record for those guys. And I was telling them back then that I thought Flo was tired. And I said, we got to start getting away from that. Well, number one, I'm happy to see them getting away from it. Number two, knowing that company and the way that we did business with them, I'm not surprised that they would try to sneak in the $8 surcharge. But that's only for shipping, Bob.
I know, it's only for shipping, but still, I'm just kind of like, it ruined the whole thing because I was so excited. I was going to get this book. I was early enough into this thing that I was actually going to get one of the limited edition copies. And then I came to the $8 and I'm like, no, I don't think it was worth $8.
It's too bad, worth more than that $8 would be the buzz that they could get around something like that, because it is a good campaign, no doubt.
Now, in the truly fail category, I'm going to give it to Indian CPG, well, not to the company, but to the forces surrounding the company. Indian CPG company DeBoer, I think that's pronounced correctly, was forced to pull ads featuring a same-sex couple. The company is facial goods and like bath salts, I guess. I don't know, all kinds of things that are good for your body, and they're all natural. Michelle, what is the deal that, I guess it is India. There is more of a social pariah status given toward homosexuals, and I just don't see why you would pull this ad. In spite of the backlash, it's just not a good situation to be backing down to homophobia in 2021.
Well, as I understand it, they were told to take it down. I don't think, it didn't seem like it was very much a choice that they had. Because it was actually like a state regulator or something like that, like the regional person for that area that told them to take it down because of, breaching standards. Look, in
this day and time, that was scary. Yeah.
But these are
different countries. We say
these are cultural sensitivities.
One second.
Yeah, they're cultural sensitivities. There are also countries where being gay is literally still illegal, and so we have to be mindful of that too. So this is it's disappointing, but I really hope that the talk around it globally can actually put some pressure on it, because that does help change things as well. It's cultural sensitivities in other countries, but I'm glad we're talking about it.
Me too.
It's public.
I'm sorry, Michelle. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just saying, I think in today's day and age, whether you're a local company or a global company, everybody's global, and you got to be really careful, because somehow that backlash could sting you. That I was surprised to read that whole article.
Yeah, it was very surprising when I read it. And I'm sorry I didn't get all the facts right, but thankfully we have Michelle, who actually read the article and got all the facts for us.
I told you to do business with Michelle, right?
I know.
This is why.
Well, the foul for this week... go ahead. I guess it's my time. Okay, I'll go. The foul for this week, I'm going to give to Facebook yet again. Digiday, the publication Digiday, examined Facebook's policy of continually tracking and growing data on dormant accounts. Now, we've always known that when you suspend an account, Saul, or you say the account is not going to be... I'm sorry, I was going to go to Michelle on this one. When you suspend an account on Facebook, we know your account stays live. It's still there somewhere, and Facebook can access it. We've known that, and unless you delete the account completely, you're going to have your data accessed. But what we didn't know was that Facebook continually adds information and tracking details about your activities online using that same profile, even though you've deactivated the profile in the first place. For me, this is a real foul. I mean, this is not good, and it shows one more reason not to trust Facebook with your data.
It's just unethical. If you put something into stasis, it's on pause. I don't think we should. Of course, we should think about it. That's part of the narrative these days, is that we actually need to think about all the things that could happen to our data and be conscious of them. But it's one of those things that just ethically, when they decided to do that, somebody decided to do it, or rather, maybe it happened by default and they decided to just keep it and not tell anybody. That's decisions that were made, and I would really hope that they come out with a policy change and they actually announce that. They likely won't. I doubt they will. This is just a blip, and it's one of those things that we'll probably stop talking about because it's people who have suspended their accounts. It's not an outrage necessarily. It's just another sneaky, clearly unethical thing.
Yeah,
but decision, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, Facebook does this, but Meta would never do this.
Thank you, Saul. My God, let's face it. Like, I live in Chicago right now, and the Xfinity did the same thing. It was Comcast, and they were getting so many customer service problems. They said, no, now we're Xfinity, and it's like, I mean, okay, well, then we won't call you bad anymore. Come on.
Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag #FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
Like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. It's just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.